Navigating COVID-19, a member perspective. In this episode, we're speaking with Dr. Michel Guité, CEO of Vermont Telephone Company, also known as VTel, in Springfield, Vermont. VTel is a small family-owned rural telephone company providing landline service to 14 Vermont villages, as well as 4G LTE wireless service to thousands of homes throughout the rural part of the state. VTel was the first in Vermont to offer internet in 1995 and the first to build gigabit per second internet over fiber to homes in 2001. Their 1,400-mile optical fiber network reaches from Vermont to New York, Boston, and Montreal, and serves some of the most distinguished universities and research institutions in the world, including Dartmouth, MIT, and McGill. A few weeks ago, when the realities of the coronavirus were setting in and schools were beginning to send students home, the community VTel supports realized that many students would be without internet and a means to connect to their educators. The school system reached out to VTel for help, and they quickly went to work on a solution.
So when this catastrophe of coronavirus began to become apparent to all of us, and so much has happened in the last 5 or so weeks, but it was only 5 or so weeks ago where, maybe 6 weeks ago, where one of the schools called us and said, gee, we might start having to send people home. I mean, now it's so obvious to all of us, my gosh, of course everybody's home, but then it wasn't. And one of these schools that we knew well, and we've been serving with fiber for some years in the city of Rutland, Vermont, which is one of the poorest cities in Vermont, said to us, if we have to send everybody home, we've got about 100 families that are in real serious financial need, and we wonder if there's any ideas you have of how you could perhaps help us reach out to them. So we looked at that using our conventional Ericsson last generation BRS radios. BRS is the 2.5 gigahertz mid-band 5G spectrum that the FCC awards out. And we realized that only about 12 or so of them would be getting service with our existing radios. And we then plugged in what happens if you use the new Super Ericsson next generation radios. And we said, hey, about 85 people of the 100 get service using these new radios. Let's try it. So we reached out to Ericsson and said, gee, could we do this in days instead of the normal 7 or 8 months? And they threw themselves into it. They did a fabulous job. Just, it takes dozens and dozens of people to make a new set of antennas high in a tower, high in a building, sort of come to life in a matter of days. But they did it, and our installation teams did it. And so bingo, there it was, with suddenly kids getting speeds up to 300 meg off the same rooftop that would have been giving them speeds of, maybe 25 or 30 before. So in terms of the helping people, the school then sent around school buses with not laptops, but with Chromebooks, and then with our devices and handed those out to home. So those seem to be working. We're not directly involved with those families. We're just involved in the technology side. But the technology side worked really, really well. It worked ahead of expectations. So that was so much fun that we said, hey, let's do this more broadly. So we offered to all the school boards in Vermont free wireless if anybody passed the qualifications we wanted, which is you need to be getting 20 meg at least from one of our 135 towers that has capacity on it, that kind of thing. And so we've got a number of those things. And then we thought, well, what else might we do? So then our last effort was to reach out to the 230 towns in Vermont saying, does anybody need free Wi-Fi hotspots? And again, working with bureaucracies is awfully slow sometimes. So gradually people are coming in. I think we've got about 15 now that we're putting in. We're trying to get to 50. We have about another 25 that are mulling it over. So that should be done within 30 to 90 days also. So overall, we did the Rutland Massive MIMO radio project for 100 target kids. And then we did the about another 100 free devices for other kids that got a strong wireless signal from us. And then we're doing now the 50 Wi-Fi hotspots. So those are our 4 projects. It's rewarding for us because, of course, these times are terribly upsetting for those people who are in distress. And the problem is, of course, especially in an independent-minded place like Vermont, people that are in distress aren't really very visible. Do you know what I mean? In other words, they're not identifying themselves so easily, so that the schools are very, very confidential with regard to what address. They don't tell us the exact address. They sort of tell us within 3 or 4 homes, that kind of thing. So it's really nice to be helping people who might not be making public that they're in great need.
Dr. Guité then shared how VTel employees are adapting to their new normal, continuing to provide great service to their customers while ensuring proper safeguards remain intact.
We have about 55 total employees, and we're trying to have as many working from home as possible. And so we've done a couple of things. The most difficult and dangerous part is we've got 17 trucks. We've got 17 people out there in those trucks that are almost every day out interacting with customers. And then the challenging part is that we can't afford to have only 16 or only 15. I mean, it's really essential that all 17 are out there meeting needs right now, solving problems, fixing things. And so they've found it challenging to develop rules and procedures that keep them as safe as possible. And so we've done 2 or 3 things so that our folks aren't allowed to go into homes or offices anymore. And when I say not allowed, it's not as if we said to them, gee, you must stop going into homes and offices. But they worried about doing that and wondered if it might be better to have a requirement that says you cannot. And so we jointly developed that as a concept so that if somebody is invited into a home, they go to the home with a face mask on and with rubber gloves, and they say to the homeowner, I'm sorry, I can't come in, but if you need me to do any work outside, I'm here to do it. And if you want to open a window, I can hand you a wire and give you a temporary connection or do whatever will work and help you do whatever you need to inside the home, but we're not permitted inside unless it's an unusual emergency. And so far, we don't have any illnesses. We don't have anybody off work, so that's been a huge blessing. So that seems to be working well. But our guys are out there working probably harder than ever to keep up with needs. More people that have second homes and that have sort of fled to Vermont from New York, from Boston, from Philadelphia, some from California, some movie stars, in fact, that we serve. Kind of they expect to have their phones working, and we have an obligation to go and make that happen, and we do so. But we just don't go inside. The biggest problem we have is that because they're accustomed to being friendly, they're accustomed to smiling at the customer and saying, how can I help you? And there are customers that say, well, gee, come on in. No, come on in. No, we need you inside. They just aren't in the habit of saying no. And so it's not so easy. Dealing with each household, each human, each person, takes diplomacy, takes care, is a balancing act of trying to do the right thing. And if you're in customer service, as our men and women are, it's not easy for them to. They haven't been really trained to say, I'm sorry, stay away from me. I'm sorry, I need 6 feet. I'm sorry, I won't take off my face mask. So it's really tough for them. But so far we've been blessed with, I think, as far as I know, consistent good health for everybody.
Lastly, Dr. Guité offered his advice for organizations trying to decide the best way to help customers during this time and the value in doing what's right.
We have 2 categories of customer we serve. One within our 14 towns where we have, 18,000 or so phone customers. And many of the people who were out of internet and we were told the schools need internet owed us, let's say, $1,500, $2,000, this kind of thing. And I presume that many people across the country find that. And we hear from, say, Comcast here saying, well, gee, we just won't give free service to somebody that owes us a $1,500 balance. Or we hear also the big local phone company here in Vermont, which is Consolidated. I hear they're saying something along that line. But what we decided to do is we said, it's not our job to be angry at anybody. Our job is to say we forgive everything during this crisis. We couldn't care less if you owe us $1,500. In fact, if you say have our internet device that you refuse to return and you owe us $1,500, it's an advantage because we can just press a button and it's already in your house. So the one thing is you have to put aside the sort of old way of thinking, because one day this will be over. That's part one. Part two, on the wireless side, where we're dealing with people that we don't necessarily know as well. In other words, we know everybody within our 14 towns. We don't know everybody within the 600,000 person population in Vermont. And we find when we're offering service that strange stories come along. Like, just to give you a peculiar anecdote, a lady called me and said, "Well, I really want your service. I really absolutely need it, and I really have never liked your company at all. And I'm paying for Consolidated now, but I don't feel I'm getting enough capacity. I'll get more capacity off of you, so I just want you to give me free service for 3 months, and I'm going to dump you." I thought, well, okay, that's not very flattering, but we're saying we're not trying to make value judgments about anybody. We're saying we're here to help. One day this will be over, and we want to say we did the right thing. So my advice is just be out there trying to help people. You don't even need to understand what each situation is. The less I feel that I know about whether someone's poor, whether they don't have internet, whether they have a bill with someone else, I couldn't care less. We're just here to help. We do it whenever we can, and when this is over, we'll say we did a good job.
Special thanks to Dr. Guité and VTel for sharing more about their response to COVID-19. To find out more information about this episode and other helpful resources, please visit the member think tank section of the COVID-19 Solutions Resource HQ on the NISC community. Want to share your story? Please send an email to Jennifer Sagel at the email address in the body of this post. Thanks for listening.